time to look ahead at the free agency of power forwards for the Indiana Pacers. Who could they target at this position? A lot of internal candidates, obviously. Pascal, Siakam, and Obi Toppin. Could they hit anyone else? What scenarios would change their thinking? Ethan Krieger and I break it all down today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Tuesday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today, free agency by position continues with power forwards. A lot of Pascal Siakam, a lot of Obi Toppin, a lot of other guys. Maybe we'll talk about all of it today. Why the Pacers would target a four-man at all, including their own internal guys on the market. Who are the best players available? We talk about LeBron James for more than 60 seconds. How about that? Realistic targets at the position beyond, of course, Pascal Siakam and Obi Toppin. Ethan Krieger, formerly of the greatest Pacers side of all time, the Fieldhouse, as well as 8.9 seconds, joins me to break it all down. Really good discussion. We get into everybody you could imagine using the Spotrac list of available power forwards on the free agent market. As a heads up, there's a chance this episode is out and you're hearing about free agent signings because the finals are later. It hasn't happened yet. Ethan and I recorded before. I'm going to put this up at midnight, so it's as relevant as possible, but it's possible that the Celtics win Game 5 and then teams can negotiate with their own free agents and you start hearing about signings. If so, just know that if there's nothing out yet, I will have episodes up about the Pacers signings if they happen as soon as it happens. If not, if the Mavs win, great. This episode's awesome. You'll get player season reviews tomorrow. Thank you all for that. Let's just dive right in with Ethan Krieger. Power forwards. Last year, this episode looked a lot different because the Pacers had none power forwards. They hadn't drafted Tyrese yet. They hadn't traded for Obi Toppin yet. They hadn't traded for Pascal Siakam yet. Who the heck's going to start at the four for this team? Is it going to be Aaron Nesmith? Well, now they have lots of stuff to sort out at this position, but at least a base in place with restricted free agents, guys in their team. Siakam looking like he's going to be back. And yet, we have to cut through the free agent market at maybe the most important position in the NBA right now. And joining me to do it, a guy who last year, I think when we did this, we talked about Grant Williams and Rui Hachimura. Man, what a time. It's Ethan Krieger, formerly of the greatest Pacers website of all time, the Fieldhouse, as well as 8.9 seconds. Ethan, what's up, man? How are you?
I am good, man. How about you?
We're recording this at 6:30-ish on Monday,
Yep.
So give me a pick right now. Who's finals over tonight?
I think Boston closes it out tonight, yes.
I do too.
I would like to see it go longer, but yeah, it just feels like it's Boston's series to win, obviously, and why not just close it out tonight? So that's my pick for sure.
I agree with you, and I'm using that as my segue to say, if that happens and Boston wins, there's a chance you're listening to this episode and free agency has already started, and some of these signings are getting leaked. So there's a chance that we'll go from this episode to talking about actual signings the Pacers make. If not, the series will continue, and player season recaps with Caitlin will roll through the week. So the power forward spot last year, way up in the air for the Pacers. Who the heck is going to be around? Jordan Nwora? Is O'Shea Brissett going to still be on the team? What's going to go on this year? It's a little different, and I always start these with, why would the Pacers sign someone at this position? And the doomsday reason would be Siakam signs elsewhere and Toppin, doesn't agree, and then there's a scenario of they keep Siakam, but they don't keep Toppin, but they still would like someone there, maybe somebody better than Tyrese, maybe somebody worse than Tyrese. And then there's a scenario where they keep both Siakam and Toppin, but you still want fours in case of injury or you want a vet. So there's lots of paths this could go, and I say that to say, generally, you would like someone in this spot no matter what, but it feels like the big picture of this is re-sign their own guys, but there's still reason to add a four-man, even if everything kind of goes expectedly for the Pacers this offseason. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do for sure. I definitely think most likely situation is keeping Pascal, is keeping Toppin, but then there is like some space after that. I know. I'm assuming Jalen Smith probably picks up his player option, is still on the team next year. But that's, possible. That could be a spot that becomes open. James Johnson, it's great to have him on the bench as kind of that, vet leader, but is he actually going to have a roster spot next year too? So if things kind of go as most people would hope, and the Pacers keep Obi and they keep Pascal, there could still be some space to bring someone in, some more depth. They're like a good vet just to have that extra, voice in the locker room. So we'll see how it all kind of shakes out. But yeah, kind of regardless, I think there is room to bring in at least one guy here for sure.
So so first of all, Kendall Brown could be a free agent, like he's 4-3-ish. James Johnson is a free agent. Like I'm kind of just tossing them to the side for this discussion because that's like the last thing you'd do in the summer, right? So it's not like so important that we refer to those. I will operate most of this podcast as if Pascal Siakam is on the Pacers, just because if he's not, this whole discussion is different. Like I guess we'll get to it next segment because like Tobias Harris is a 4 who I guess could start, and Kyle Anderson's kind of good. Maybe you could just start Obi and try to get somebody else, but without him, this whole conversation is kind of impossible to have because their resources are a lot lower. Like they don't just have that much cap space all of a sudden. So how they would manage the 4 spot if they don't have him it's a disaster all of a sudden. Like their whole summer completely changes. And that is like, why would they sign a 4? Well, because they want to sign the best free agent they can get, which is Pascal Siakam. So like, duh. After that, I kind of feel like there's a lot of things. So to address something you just said, which is really interesting, Caitlin and I just did our season reviews for centers, and we talked about Jalen Smith's player option. And we were both like, well, there's good reason for both sides. I actually leaned opt out. And then a few days later, Michael Scotto reported that is the early indications for Smith, which is interesting. So like, we don't have to get into that decision right now. I only bring that up to say, like, pretend that he does. If you're the Pacers, you like, yeah, Obi Toppin, you could be our backup 5 or third 5, and then you definitely want another 4. So that's another wrinkle to what you just said. Or you want a 4-5 instead of Toppin if he signs elsewhere or gets priced out of you in restricted free agency. So the Smith factor is certainly interesting because a lot of their 4s can play 5. They played small ball 5 with Siakam in the playoffs. Toppin played some 5 and went fine enough. So that is a part of it as well. But the more interesting part behind Siakam to me specifically is what is Jarris, right? If they want to find a role for Jarris, is it at the 3? And if they can't, do they want someone solid? If they lose Obi, do they not care about that? And they'd rather just sign somebody behind Jarris? That's where I think it's interesting with Obi, because I think that if you're a small market team, you just keep the players' rights and figure it out, right? He's positive value, keep the player, maybe trade him later. I'm rambling here to say, if they want to, it would be a great summer if they address the power forward spot by re-signing who they had the 4 last year. But I do understand with Jarris and the potential of some other guys in this market to at least think about what re-signing Obi looks like at this spot.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting with Jarris too, because coming into his first season, like when I was kind of watching draft tape and everything with him, once the Pacers kind of took him last summer, I kind of viewed him more as a possible 4/5.
Me too.
And then just kind of seeing him like throughout this year and just like seeing his actual, like skills and what his game actually looks like, I think he translates more to a 3/4 than a 4/5. So then it just kind of becomes, is he your potential bench 4 if you do lose one of these guys, or like do you want to play him more at the 3? Do you think he's ready? Yeah, so he's a big kind of wild card in this whole topic anyway, just because I'm not really sure what spot he should play anymore, and I'm not sure where the Pacers kind of view him in terms of being ready for actual minutes next season either. So we'll see.
They might view him as whatever position they have minutes available.
For sure.
If they lose Obi with their proximity to the tax, and this might depend on what Jalen Smith decides to do, they could have the full mid-level. And so they could actually get like a decent 3 or 4 as a backup if they really wanted to and they didn't care about burying Jarris at all. Like Robert Covington that's probably too much for him. I already said Kyle Anderson, so I don't want to mention him again. There's got to be somebody who this actually makes sense for, but that is something that they could look to do. And we talked about the 3s last week with Alex Golden. Taurean Prince maybe fits this bill, so that's an option as well. But to me, the most interesting kind of like why they would sign someone is like you need depth at this spot, and if Jarris is playing the 3 or the 5, do you just want like a token vet or guy who's not going to expect minutes but can play? Because now maybe they want development spots for guys that can't play, but when your goal is development, you kind of use those bonus roster spots on like young guy to take a flyer on. When you're trying to win, you use those spots on like, well, crap, if 3 players are hurt one night and we need to throw somebody in there, we need someone that is like not going to suck, right? Like a former Pacer we'll get to later, like Thad Young. for
Yep.
example. And that kind of feels like a pursuit that I said this with the threes too. If they just resign guys, that makes sense to me. Just like, here's a guaranteed minimum contract, come be a vet, play if there's injuries, or play if our rookies aren't ready. Because again, my operating assumption for a lot of this is going to be Pascal's back, and I think it makes the most sense to retain Obi. That's kind of boring, but the reasons to sign a 4 would be depth at the spot and keeping the guys you have in house. So that is like the external, not guys they have reason, which it's hard to find that guy who's willing to take a no minutes role, right? People either want to play or they want to get paid. So there's a very limited scope of who that would be. But I talked about those with the threes as well. So that's kind of the last one to me of this.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny too, because this is the first summer in a long time where I've kind of said, if the Pacers just bring back everyone, I'm kind of good with that. Like, it is boring, but obviously we saw some, just some massive moves from the team this year, like just in terms of getting better, making it to the conference finals. You can say they have like a, not the hardest path to get there. That's fine, whatever. They still got there with this team, and they're still young for the most part. So it is the first season that I can even think back since I started following this team that I'm just good bringing back, most of who was a key player last season, just kind of see what happens next season too. Everyone gets older, everyone, kind of gels more, and just kind of keep building that way too. So yeah, it's a weird summer from that angle too, just because I feel like the Pacers have not been in this spot for a long time, for sure.
Yeah, they're so young that if they run it back, they'd go, yeah, we think we'll be better, right? Like these exact same players, 6 or 7 of them should just naturally be slightly better. That's not how it works, but like that thinking makes sense to me, right?
Yeah.
So it's very strange. And then if next year happens and they lose in the first or second round, then they go, okay, now we have multiple years of information about all of our young guys. Let's build our team. Okay, the way I go second on these free agency discussions, we've gone through why they would sign a 4. Well, right now they have none, but likely they'll have, or at least somewhat likely they'll have 1 or 2 good ones. Hey guys, short little break so we can talk about FanDuel. It's summertime, the NBA Finals, the Stanley Cup, baseball, my favorite, and plenty more. You can bet on it all at FanDuel. Right now, new customers over there get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. $200. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything. Finals MVP, Stanley Cup MVP, who's going to hit one out of the park, the spreads, the over-unders, the parlays that you love, all of it. You get the $200 that can go straight to that on FanDuel. And you got to go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to get that offer and add a big win to your summer bucket list. Again, any winning $5 bet, you get $200 in bonus bets. FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. The best guys on the market. And the top of the market is very funny this year. It's very strange because what Spotrac does is it sorts by last year's salary, which sounds like a good way to sort by player talent. In this position, it does not do a very good job of that. The top guy is LeBron James, who was a player option and could opt out. Look, let's do this for 15 to 20 seconds so I can check a box and smile.
Yep.
Bronny's in the draft.
Yep.
Pacers have some second rounders. I don't actually buy that LeBron's going to opt out and sign with a different team if Bronny gets drafted somewhere else. He's not going to just sign with, if his son wasn't joining the NBA, he's not signing with the Pacers. So I'm not going to think that that's even a thing, but there's my 20 seconds on that.
Yeah. My thing with that is I could see him opting out to join a team that drafts Bronny, but not the Pacers. Like, there's no way that he would ever come here, regardless of if Bronny is here or not. So if the Pacers want to spend a second-round pick on Bronny, who a lot of people think shouldn't even be drafted, and his name is only up there because he is, Bronny James, sure. But I do not think the Pacers should try to do anything to try to get LeBron here, because I just don't think he would ever come, regardless of if his son is here or not.
I have wondered if, like, a second rounder, at what point does a pick's I can't even describe what I'm trying to say. Like, if Bronny's still available at like 40, do those picks all of a sudden, like, our team's like, ooh, we can get Bronny? Like, does it become more valuable in this crappy draft? But and the other thing you said that I think is interesting, I don't want to make this a Bronny discussion, is he was thought of as like a lotto guy before the heart thing. So it's kind of hard for me to know what he is, because he was not a good player last year, but that's whatever. LeBron's not going to be on the Pacers next year. we
No
can
chance.
cruise over that, even though before last year, I think there was like all the reporting was like, yeah, he wants to play with the Sun. And now everybody's like, okay, maybe not. The next guys in annual value, there's only 5 more players at this position on Spotrac's list of 4s who made more than 10 million last year.
Mm-hmm.
Two of them made a lot. One of those is Pascal Siakam. Yeah, he would make a lot of sense for the Pacers because he played for them last year, and there's a lot of good sense in that. The other one is Tobias Harris. I don't know what to make of what's going to happen with him in free agency. Is he worth more than the mid-level exception? Probably.
Yeah.
Is he better than Obi Toppin? Yeah. So if they lose Siakam and Obi Toppin, maybe Tobias Harris could be on the Pacers. If not, I don't see it. Doesn't make sense for him or the Pacers.
Correct me if I'm wrong with him, but was his name not in some Pacers trade rumors, like at least in the last couple of years?
Yes. Yes. I'll say that. I think that had a lot to do with how much he was making.
Yeah. So that makes sense. Only thought there was if the Pacers did previously have some sort of, want to add him to the team, might be a name that they look at if things go completely wrong and they have a ton of money to just kind of throw out there to people. But
if they lose Siakam, go for it. But that's pretty much it to me. Unless I think he could start at the 3, but I think no one in Philly, nothing about his Philly stint makes me think they should be tripping all over themselves to try to do that. The next up is Siakam. Nothing to say. They should try to keep him and pay whatever it takes. And then the only other 3 guys who made more than 10 million last year, PJ Tucker, who's going to opt into an $11.5 million player option, even though he barely plays anymore. Davis Bertans made 16 million last year. And he's going to be stuck with the Hornets for a little bit into camp because of the way his guarantees work.
Mm-hmm.
He's a good player, but whatever. And Robert Covington, who made 12 million last year, is an unrestricted free agent and is kind of good. He's probably close to as good, maybe a little worse than Obi Toppin. Do any of them mean anything to the Pacers? The problem is we have to go back to what we said in the first segment. If they're not better than Obi, what's the point? Just keep Obi at that point.
Right. PJ Tucker, no. I think he is completely aged out of this team. They really have no use for him at all. Covington is a guy, yes, only if, things kind of go crazy and they don't bring back Pascal and maybe Toppin gets a crazy offer from somewhere else. He is a name that you might kind of look at. He's a guy that, would bring, help to the team on defense for sure, which is good. This team could definitely use that. His offensive game has kind of fallen off a cliff as he's aged. He can still shoot, but if you just look at his points per game, it's 4 points, 5 points for the last 3 or 4 seasons. He just doesn't score. The Pacers do plenty of that without him, so might be a name that you look at, just kind of balance the team out some. But only if there's a spot that opens with one of the 2 Pacers players deciding not to come back.
I agree. Formerly a first-team all-defense guy, not that anymore, decidedly. But formerly it would be like PJ Tucker and Robert Covington 5 years ago. I'd be like, wow, that's exactly what the Pacers need. And then Bertans, sick shooter. That's it. Again, in all these cases, I think you'd just rather have Obi if you're the Pacers. He fits really well. So the top end guys from last year, there's some better players than that. Kyle Anderson's good. He might be better than Obi. I'm not sure where I feel on that. He does not fit the Pacers style at all to me, but he can defend. So there is that. Taurean Prince is a good player to me. I don't know what he's worth or if he's better than Obi Toppin in my head. And the rest of this free agent group at this position is not particularly awesome. Do you like anyone else?
No, honestly, as I was kind of looking at this list and going through everything, the only people that I kind of wrote in very small print, next to were Harris. If the money is there and they've got to do something with it. Covington, kind of same thing. If Toppin leaves, maybe you bring him in and he can kind of fill that same role in some ways. Taurean Prince. And then the only other 2 that I had were James Johnson for the reasons that we already know, and Thad Young just for an extra bet piece. Besides that, honestly, I mean, to me, Anderson is just too slow to fit this team. Jeff Green is way too old. Markieff Morris, no thank you. And then there's really just there's just not too much else out there in terms of players that the Pacers could actually get. kind of a skinny position, which I think lends to the Pacers probably just bringing their guys back because there's really not a lot of great options out there.
There's some like 2-3-4s and 3-4s that are appealing
Mm-hmm.
and potentially, squeaked into this discussion in previous episodes. But yes, for this list specifically, because again, for everybody asking, I use Spotrac's list of players out of position, so I don't do overlap with people doing these. Man, it's rough. It's a tough crew from last year. You mentioned Taurean Prince.
Mm-hmm.
I think Obi's better than him. He is a good player, right? Like he shot at least 37.5% from three in all but one season since 2017-18. That's good. That's valuable. He's a good enough defender. He's got some size. At one point, he could really rebound. He hasn't really shown that as much with recent teams. So, like, if they lose Obi Toppin, that's a good pivot to me if they really want to not, like, if they're not ready to play Jarris. I'd get that because, like, he like Kyle Anderson can defend. Like people call him slow-mo because like his moves are slow, not because he is literally slow, but stylistically he would just not really gel with them offensively. But he is not a shooter, right? And like that would be really tough. We've seen what that can look like in the Pacers offense. So that like he's good too. He's as good as Prince in my head. But I think of like the legitimately okay players that like if you lose Obi Toppin, you'd say the Pacers could sign that guy. And I'd say I would probably rather play Jarris than this guy, but at least I get it. Taurean Prince is like the only guy, maybe the only guy on the list. Like I would not get it for Covington or Bertans. Tobias Harris isn't taking their money because he wouldn't play enough. Like it's just there's not a person on this list that makes sense in that way.
There is one more for me.
Uh-oh.
As you scroll way towards the bottom, but it takes a lot of weird stuff to also happen as well. So if Pascal decides to go somewhere else, which again I think is very unlikely, the Pacers do not give up what they gave up, what they gave up to get him if they're not planning on maxing him and giving him exactly what he wants. But say he just, for whatever reason decides to go somewhere else. Do you think Cleveland maxes Mobley?
This guy on this list is his brother, Isaiah Mobley.
Well, never mind.
Mobley would be awesome. I was like, I figured out exactly what you're going to say.
So you don't want to max Isaiah Mobley?
No, I do not. I would max Evan Mobley. I love Evan Mobley. He is.
I don't know why I didn't look at the first name.
He's 3 seasons in, so he's extension eligible this summer. They could trade an arm and a leg for him, and they'd still say no. But
yeah,
how it is. Yeah, he's 3 seasons in. Okay.
My bad.
That's okay. I like that we got to talk about Isaiah Mobley. That would never happen. He doesn't suck. He's like a fine two-way player. It's very funny to me that Jonte Porter is still listed on this list.
I know. Yeah, I saw that too, and that definitely made me chuckle a little bit.
Yeah. Everybody else is like hoping to get a roster spot or minutes, really.
Yep.
Jeff Green's fine, I guess, but does he play on the Pacers? No.
I mean, he's played everywhere else but the Pacers, so maybe it just makes sense for him to just check one more team off his list. I don't know.
Dario Saric was in rotations last year. Yeah, he didn't really do much for them. I bet he would be wanting to play still. He played 64 games last year. It's kind of it in terms of the top. I can't believe I'm about to finish talking about Dario Saric. Says that's kind of it for the top guys. One more break here, guys, so we can talk about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts. For your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers.
Right.
So let's talk about some realistic fits. And let me put a caveat on this. The most realistic fit for a 4-man for the Pacers this summer is Pascal Siakam. The second most realistic fit for a 4-man this summer for the Pacers is Obi Toppin. And potentially the third best fit for the Pacers as a 4-man this summer is James Johnson, right? Like what I want to actually talk about, and the reason for this exercise is on the team players. Like if they added someone, is there someone out there who actually fits in, or there's a role that makes sense for them, or a job that has value? And so there's kind of so if they lose, we mentioned Harris. If they lose Siakam, I guess he'd be the first pivot point. If they just lose Toppin, we've nailed those guys. That's your Andersons, your Princes. But the next step down from that is they have to be good enough to say, we're signing this guy to not play Jarris Walker. And there's not anyone else in that group. And so that kind of lends me to anyone they would get 3-4. And we talked about Gordon Hayward last week. Like, I guess there's something there. Would be someone who either is a young guy that they're like, yeah, this guy could play or like get better with us and maybe sneak in and be interesting. I have some names that I would throw out for that in a second. Or the opposite, which is a veteran who never plays but can play in a pinch. And let me be clear what I mean by that. I do not think James Johnson is what I just described. James Johnson is an awesome veteran and a locker room guy, but they don't want, like, if there's an injury, they do not play him. Like, they don't. Whereas there are vets like McDermott a little bit, but not as much, where like he did play in a pinch, right? Like he can physically do it. Like there is a difference. Like there would be, if there was a depth chart of fours, James Johnson would be fourth behind this guy I'm describing. Does that all make sense to you?
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny with James too, because you're absolutely right. Like he never should really play under any circumstance. I don't really know if he wants to either. Like I'm pretty sure there was one game during the postseason, I forget which series it was, but it was a game that the Pacers were just clearly going to win. And late in the fourth quarter, the crowd started chanting for James to actually come in. Rick, I feel like, kind of looked at James, and James just still did not come in. Was very happy, just still sitting on the bench, even though like it was a total blowout win. It was over. So I'm not even sure. I mean, I don't want to like put words in his mouth. I'm not even sure if he really wants to play. I think he's more than happy with his role where he's at, just kind of being that like veteran presence and being the kind of enforcer when he needs to, when things are kind of going crazy during a playoff game or whatever. So yeah, I don't think he fits what you're talking about, that like kind of vet that can still actually jump in and give you like some actual minutes if you really need him. That does not say or scream James Johnson to me at all either.
Oh yeah, I remember the riding the high of the Pacers game 4 and the crowd chanting James Johnson. I was like, this is going to be a story if he comes in the game, and he didn't play. And what do you remember what happened in the next game? They got smoked in New York, and then he did play in the Garden. You know, like he got in. That was his only playoff game. Was that one for 1 minute? It's funny that you mentioned that because my fiance was asking, like, what's free agency look like blah blah blah. And I was explaining all the free agents. She's like, you don't talk about James Johnson very much. And I was like, yeah, he played 9 games last year. He made 3 shots, and then she wanted to watch them. So we watched all 3 of James Johnson's made shots together, literally this week. So he makes sense to come back. Like clearly being a 0 on the court, they don't care. They still want to have him on the team. They did that last year. And like, I still wonder, you know, when Obi Toppin and Bobby Portis get into it in game 6 at home and he steps up and gets a tech, does that tech stop Obi from getting ejected? Does that win them the game? Like that has like incalculable value. So anyway, James Johnson, if they bring him back, yes, makes a ton of sense. I get it. I know other people think just become a coach, but like there's value to like practicing with everybody, whatever. So there is the sweet spot. And you mentioned a guy I do want to talk about. There's a couple of these. This guy I know is like an incredible vet. So I start with him. And that's Thad Young, who played for the Pacers before. He is not the player he once was, obviously, or else he'd be a lock to be on a team last year. Like everybody thought it was a big deal. The Suns got him last year, played 10 games for the Suns, right? Like he's not that valuable of a player anymore, but he does not suck. Like he played 15 minutes per game for Toronto last year. 2 seasons ago, he played 15 minutes a game, 54 games. He's certainly declining, but is certainly still an NBA player. So he's probably in that sweet spot of like guaranteed money, doesn't play now. And so if the Pacers need a third 4-man, this guy would not play over Jarris. Still a good vet, as preferable to a bad vet, obviously. Thad Young does make some sense if he's willing to take their minimum money. Yeah, definitely. And I would love to have him back. I don't think there's really anyone in the whole state that disliked Thad Young when he was here and playing for the Pacers team. So I think a lot of fans would love to have him back. And is a guy that if you really, really are desperate and need someone that can just jump in and fill in 5-10 minutes, he is still that. Yeah, you're not screwed. You're not screwed, right? And that's like you're not screwed if James Johnson's in the game, but you know what's coming. Whereas with Thad Young, you know, it's a little different. So I know Thad Young from when he was on the team, and I covered him before, so I obviously know what kind of veteran value he has. It's very funny. Every time he goes to a new team, he does the same quote of like, I love it here. These guys aren't buttholes. He says buttholes every time. He did it with the Spurs, he did it with the Raptors and the Pacers. Another vet-ish guy that like, he can play in a pinch. He played in the playoffs against the Pacers. Danilo Gallinari probably fits his bill. He might also be looking for guaranteed minutes this season because he could just go to Europe and play a bunch and be legendary if he wanted to. But the vet crew after that is not very good. Markieff Morris, I guess. A little different there. I kind of think it's just that or Gallinari in that way.
Yeah, and I should have looked at Jeff Green's actual numbers. Like, is he still actually getting any minutes whatsoever?
He's not he was in the rotation for the champs 2 years ago, man. Jeff
Green's that's true, but that's 2 years, and now he's what?
Played 78 games last year.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, so he could definitely kind of fit that same role as Thad Young.
I think he's too good for it. I think.
Really? Okay.
I think yes. Okay. Because he would be perfect to me. Like every team he's on freaking loves Jeff Green, right? Yeah. But I just feel like I think the Rockets could just pick up his giant option and trade him next year, use him as salary. So I don't even know if he'll be available. But he does check the boxes we're talking about. He's too good. He's actually too good for this spot.
Fair.
That's what I
think. Besides that, honestly, man, I don't see a whole lot else here that really jumps out to me.
Well, let me pitch you stuff. Okay.
Sure.
So this is the hardest player to sign in the league, and that is a young guy who actually has some like intrigue and pizzazz, who's willing to take a slot on a team where he would not play. Right. Like that's going to be tough for the Pacers this summer because they can't offer minutes if they keep Toppin and Siakam. Let me just throw out some names.
Sure.
Let's do the name game. Jeremiah Robinson Earl. Any interest in him? He used to play for the Thunder a lot. Now he doesn't play at all.
I mean, I feel like the Pelicans probably just pick up his option at his money.
I bet they do too. But
yeah,
I don't know, they have tax concerns. Maybe not.
That's true. So if he is actually out there, I think that's a name that you could potentially look at. I just would expect that he's back with the Pelicans.
I do too.
But we'll see what kind of shakes out with that.
Trying to be hopeful. I used to like Usman Garuba. I doubt that's a thing.
Yeah, I liked him a lot, like going into his draft.
Yeah,
then just haven't seen too much from him since he actually got to the league. So.
I like Dom Barlow. I bet the Spurs just keep him in restricted free agency. Like, this is tough. And the other problem is a lot of the other young guys are going to be wanting minutes. Like Bol is not obtainable, right? Like he wants to play where he wants to go. JT Thor probably wants minutes, although he probably doesn't deserve them. So it's hard to find the sweet spot player here. And so this position might be really simple. We might have just talked for 30 minutes about a position they're going to go, day one, we got our two guys, we're done. But there is value in every position for a team that's deep and young and like depth-ish pieces. I'm going to say a name that people will ask about, and that's Precious Achiuwa, because they need rebounding really bad. He was not good on defense in that Pacers-Knicks series, but man, can that dude rebound. If Jalen Smith opts out, like I'd sniff around for him as a 5 on the Pacers, but not a 4. And he is on this 4 list. He's just an interesting player to me, but he is restricted. I bet the Knicks just keep him. But I did want to bring him up because he's on this list, and it kind of good we didn't say him. We didn't say Chuma Okeke, who just was a first-round pick and got hurt and then didn't ever do anything with the Magic. I have no idea if he's even an NBA player at this stage. Right. He only played 47 games last year. I think that's everybody good or interesting on this list. That has at least had a moment where like, oh, they're playing every day in the NBA. I think that's it.
Yeah, and definitely think Precious could be a very useful fit here. I saw his name and, kind of thought about it for 2 seconds and then noticed that, I bet the Knicks just signed him to any offer sheet that he has. So, I mean, like, unless it gets crazy, and it's, again, possible that the Pacers could have some money to get crazy with if things just go south with Pascal for some reason. But is Precious the type of guy that you just kind of overpay if you do have all that money freed up? I would lean no. He does bring some skills to the team that, the Pacers definitely could use, but I don't think that's the guy that you go, oh, we didn't get Siakam, so let's just throw $20 million at Precious,
Anthony Gill went to Virginia and played 49 games last year. Maybe he fits that vet bill. I guess we talked about earlier. Trendon Watford's restricted. He's probably staying with the Nets. That's everybody. We got them all. Do you have anything else to add about this position? Isn't it so weird how the dynamics of this position literally flipped to complete opposites in 12 months?
100%, man. Yeah, I feel like for the longest time, this has been the
Since
position
Tad.
that, yeah. Like right when Tab left, this has been a gap since then, and it is very nice to just kind of see what it looks like now and kind of like have the idea of what it should be for the next several seasons moving forward if things go how they should this summer. So it's kind of nice not to have to worry about this spot anymore,
Yeah.
as long as we do bring back Siakam and Toppin, and we'll see what happens with Jarris in season 2. But yeah, it's crazy how quickly things can change for sure.
Since Thad, I mean, it was Turbonis, which
Mm-hmm.
did not
Nope.
pan out at the 4 at all. They tried like McDermott there off the bench, and Jakar Sampson was playing some 4, and
Yep.
and then in the Brogdon era, it was O'Shea Brissett had that stretch
Mm-hmm.
starting at the 4.
Mm-hmm.
TJ Warren was playing the 4 for a
Yep.
little bit. Jalen Smith was starting at the 4 for a little bit.
Yep.
What a journey. They have gotten to the point that this summer they could have 2 very good 4 men back on their team next year. Ethan, this was great. Where can people find you and your tweets about the Pacers, the Fever, video games, everything important to me and you is the same. So where can people find you?
At Krieger Sports, and yeah, like Tony kind of said, it's a healthy mix of basketball, video games, F1. Now I'm very into that this season,
Wow.
so you can see me tweeting about that as well if you have any interest. Food, bad jokes, whatever else you want, it's all there.
Here's my beef with F1. It's fun to watch. It's on at so early a.m. because it's in Europe.
Depending on where they're at that weekend for sure. Yeah, but it's been very fun this year so far.
Yes, I have family members who are very into it. Tomorrow, after this episode, I don't know right now because it's 6:55, and the finals are an hour and a half. If the Mavs win, you'll just get the easiest week ever to season recap episodes with Caitlin and the center preview at this position. If the Celtics win, we'll see. If the Pacers sign somebody, that is obviously priority number 1 immediately. So I can't tell you what's coming here, but it's either free agency for real, free agency for fake, or looking back at the last couple of players Caitlin and I have to get back to. You should follow Ethan. He's going to play Elden Ring's DLC on Friday, and I can't wait to play it myself. And probably the Olympic break for the WNBA. I'm on Twitter or X or whatever at Tony R. East. Thank you guys for listening. Have a wonderful day. See you very soon.